Before you close this page, transport yourself to this moment. Rough stone scrapes your palms as you stumble forward into darkness. The air shifts, thick, suffocating, reeking of blood and straw. Your heart hammers against your ribs as cruel laughter fades behind you. Then you hear it. A sound that turns your blood to ice. The deep, guttural rumble of a predator's growl, so close you feel it vibrating through your bones. You lift your eyes. Amber irises, ancient and knowing, lock onto yours through the gloom. A lion. Massive, scarred, its muzzle still dark with fresh kill. It rises from the shadows, every muscle rippling beneath golden fur, closing the distance between you. 10 feet. 8 feet. 6. This isn't fiction. This isn't a nightmare you'll wake from. This was Sarah Mitchell's reality on a cold October evening. And what unfolds in the next moments will shatter everything you thought you knew about human cruelty, animal nature, and the invisible threads that connect us all. If you're ready for a story that will seize your soul and refuse to let go, then stay with me. Because Sarah's journey begins in the most unremarkable place imaginable, in the spaces between notice and neglect. Sarah had always existed in the margins. At Riverside High, she was the girl teachers sometimes forgot to mark present, even when she sat in the third row. Her existence was painted in watercolor shades that bled into the background, soft grays, muted blues, colors that whispered rather than spoke. She shared a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with her mother, Elena, who stitched together a life from 12-hour nursing shifts and sheer determination. Their world was small but carefully tended, the apartment with its second-hand furniture and walls lined with Sarah's sketches, the public library where Sarah spent every spare moment, and the sprawling grounds of Riverside City Zoo. The zoo was Sarah's cathedral. While classmates gravitated toward the playful otters or the majestic elephant. T.S., Sarah found herself drawn inexorably to the big cat habitats. There was something in their watchful silence that resonated with her own quiet observation of the world. She would stand at the barriers for hours, sketching the way a tiger's stripes flowed like water, the way a leopard's spots created galaxies across its coat. But always, she returned to the lion enclosure. The pride's alpha male commanded attention without demanding it. He bore a magnificent dark mane shot through with bronze, and a pale scar that traced from his left eye to his muzzle, a memoir of some ancient battle. Sarah named him Solomon, after the wise king, because she saw judgment in those amber eyes. Wisdom. Understanding. Her mother called her the Big Cat Whisperer with affection, never knowing how prophetic that gentle nickname would become. The storm didn't announce itself with thunder. It came dressed in varsity jackets the color of fresh blood and midnight. Marcus Thornton, Devin Chase, and Tyler Beck wore their status like armor, their athletic prowess having purchased them immunity from consequence. They called themselves the Trinity, a name that dripped with manufactured importance. Marcus was their leader, sharp-featured, sharp-tongued, with a smile that could switch from charming to cruel in a heartbeat. Devin provided the muscle, a wall of silent menace who spoke through intimidation rather than words. Tyler was the chorus, echoing every laugh, amplifying every taunt, his cruelty derivative but no less devastating. Their hierarchy was Riverside High's unspoken law, enforced through calculated humiliation that left no visible bruises. Sarah entered their crosshairs on an ordinary Wednesday. She'd been sitting alone in the cafeteria, her sketchbook open to a detailed study of Solomon mid-roar, trying to capture the vulnerable exposure of his fangs, the tension in his jaw. Marcus materialized beside her like a beautiful nightmare. "What's this?" He snatched the book before she could react. His voice carried across the cafeteria with practiced projection. "Check it out, guys. Little Sarah draws kitty cats." The cafeteria's ambient noise dimmed as attention swiveled toward them. Devin lumbered over, silent as a landslide, and without preamble tore the page from its binding. The sound of ripping paper cut through Sarah like a physical wound. Tyler's laughter came a beat too late, as always, high-pitched and grating. Marcus held the drawing up for the gathering crowd. Is this supposed to be art? My little sister scribbles better than this. Devon, still wordless, took the crumpled page and dropped it deliberately into Sarah's untouched lunch tray, where it absorbed soup like a sponge absorbing shame. The cafeteria erupted in laughter, not everyone, but enough. Enough to make Sarah feel like her skin was peeling away, exposing every raw nerve to mockery. She said nothing. Silence was her only shield, her last fortress. She retrieved the ruined drawing, water dripping from its edges, and placed it carefully in her bag. She didn't cry. Not there. Not where they could taste her tears. From that moment, she was marked prey. The persecution took on a rhythm, a terrible drumbeat underlying her days. Shoves in the hallway that were accidents. Her carefully completed homework vanishing from her locker, forcing her to stay up past midnight to recreate it. Whispered insults that followed her like smoke: freak, cat lady, ghost girl. The last one was meant as mockery, but Sarah held it close. Being a ghost meant being untouchable, unseen. Sometimes invisibility was a blessing. If you're invested in Sarah's story and want to see where this incredible journey leads, subscribe now, because what happens next will leave you breathless. The best is yet to come. The harassment escalated with each passing week, following the logic of bullies everywhere: when silence greets cruelty, cruelty grows bolder. Sarah found her backpack soaked in energy drink, the contents, including weeks of notes, destroyed. Someone spray-painted "Cat Freak" on her locker in dripping red letters that looked disturbingly like blood. The administration painted over it but never investigated. Victimhood carried its own stigma at Riverside High, a mark that made you complicit in your own targeting. Sarah retreated further into herself, a hermit crab pulling deeper into its borrowed shell. Her mother noticed the shadows blooming under her daughter's eyes, the way food remained half-eaten on her plate, but Elena was fighting her own exhausted battles. The hospital had cut staff hours. Bills arrived like clockwork, demanding payment with the dispassion of guillotines. When Elena asked if everything was okay, Sarah painted on a smile and nodded. She couldn't add her drowning to her mother's flood. Her only sanctuary remained the zoo. Every Saturday, Sarah volunteered with the grounds crew, picking up litter and helping with minor maintenance. The pay was minimal, but it granted her something priceless: proximity to the lions. She would finish her assigned tasks quickly, then spend the remaining time at the barrier of their enclosure, watching Solomon watch the world. He was magnificent in a way that transcended mere beauty. Power contained within perfect form. When he walked, the earth seemed to acknowledge him. When he roared, the air itself trembled. But it was the quiet moments Sarah treasured most: when Solomon would settle in a patch of sun, his massive head resting on his paws, his amber eyes half-closed in contentment. In those moments, Sarah felt a kinship that transcended species. They were both observers, both existing on the periphery of louder, more demanding lives. She didn't know that soon, the barrier between observation and participation would shatter completely. The zoo was preparing for its annual autumn fundraiser, Wildlight Weekend, 3 days of extended hours, special exhibits, and increased security. The big cat enclosures were receiving temporary additional barriers, an outer perimeter of reinforced chain-link fencing to manage the expected crowds and provide an extra layer of protection during the construction of permanent upgrades. The work happened after closing hours, when the zoo transformed from a public space into something more primal, more honest. Sarah had signed up for extra cleaning shifts that weekend, needing the money and craving the peaceful hours after visitors departed. It was a Friday evening in mid-October, the sky bruising purple with approaching night, when she found herself working near the big cat sector. The construction crew had packed up for the day, leaving behind the skeleton of new fencing and the chemical smell of fresh paint. Sarah moved methodically, replacing trash bags and sweeping paths, lost in the rhythm of simple tasks. She didn't hear them approach. She never did, they'd perfected the art of ambush. Well, well. Look who's playing zookeeper. Marcus's voice slithered through the twilight, dripping false sweetness. Sarah's blood crystallized. She turned slowly, trash bag clutched in white-knuckled hands. The Trinity stood backlit by the dying sun, their varsity jackets transformed into sinister uniforms by the failing light. They reeked of beer, cheap, sharp, the smell of impaired judgment and emboldened cruelty. "We've been looking for you," Tyler said, his grin too wide, too eager. "Wanted to see your little friends up close." Devon said nothing, but his presence alone was threat enough. He cracked his knuckles with deliberate slowness, the sound like breaking bones. Sarah calculated distance to the staff building, too far. Too isolated. The construction crew was gone. Most staff would be at the front gates, managing closing procedures. She was alone with them in the zoo's sprawling back areas, where visitor paths gave way to service roads and maintenance zones. "I have to finish my shift," she managed, her voice barely audible. She tried to step around them, toward safety, toward light and people. Marcus mirrored her movement, blocking her path. "What's the rush? We just want to talk. We're trying to be friendly here." "Yeah," Tyler echoed. "Friendly. Like you and your kitty cats." They began to move then, a coordinated effort that spoke of pack hunting. They herded her, 3 wolves driving a single sheep, away from the main paths and deeper into the service areas. Sarah's heart hammered so violently she thought it might crack her ribs. She tried to veer left, Devon materialized like a wall. She tried to slow down, Marcus shoved her forward with a hand between her shoulder blades. They drove her backward until her spine met resistance. She'd been forced against the new temporary fencing, the chain link that separated the service road from the outer edge of the lion enclosure. Beyond this fence lay a 20-foot drop into the dry moat that surrounded the habitat, a deterrent designed to keep the lions contained and visitors at a safe distance. Beyond the moat rose the main barrier wall, and beyond that, Solomon's domain. "Please," Sarah whispered, the word escaping like a prayer. "Please, just leave me alone." Marcus's eyes lit with something horrible. "Ah," she said, "please. Did you guys hear that?" She said, "Please." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the broken blood vessels in his eyes, smell the beer on his breath. "You know what? We're going to grant your wish. We're going to leave you alone. With them." Comprehension arrived like a punch to the solar plexus. Sarah looked at the fence, at the gate visible 10 feet away, a simple access point meant for maintenance workers, secured with nothing more than a basic padlock. Tyler was already moving toward it, pulling something from his pocket. Bolt cutters. They'd come prepared. "No." The word barely formed. "No, please, don't." But Devon's arms were already arrow. Undy her waist, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. She kicked, writhed, a silent struggle punctuated only by her gasping breath. Tyler wrestled with the padlock, it gave way with a metallic snap that sounded like a death sentence. The gate swung open with a rusty squeal. "Have fun with your friends, cat freak," Marcus hissed in her ear. Then they threw her. Sarah's body tumbled through empty space. Her hands scraped against rock as she tried to grab anything, everything. The world became a kaleidoscope of pain and vertigo. She hit the sloped wall of the moat, bounced, tumbled, and finally crashed onto the hard-packed earth at the bottom. The impact drove all air from her lungs. Stars exploded across her vision. Above her, she heard the clang of the gate slamming shut, the rattle of chain being wrapped through metal. Then laughter, cruel, triumphant, fading as they ran. Abandoning her to darkness and fangs. For several heartbeats, Sarah couldn't move. Pain radiated from everywhere and nowhere. Her left shoulder screamed. Her hands burned with abrasions. Ribs protested when she tried to breathe. But worse than the physical pain was the dawning, terrible realization of where she was. The lion enclosure. Not the public viewing area with its reinforced glass and safety barriers. Not the night houses where the animals slept in secure compartments. She was in the moat, the buffer zone, but this particular section connected to the off-exhibit area where the lions roamed when being rotated between spaces. She was in their territory. She pushed herself upright, every muscle protesting. The moat was perhaps 15 feet wide, its walls steep rock face on the service road side and a gradual slope on the habitat side. She could see the opening where the moat connected to the main enclosure, a dark maw in the stone, large enough for a lion to pass through with ease. And from that darkness came a sound. Low. Rumbling. Ancient. A growl that seemed to originate from the earth's core, vibrating through stone and dirt and bone. Sarah's breath stopped. Her heart forgot its rhythm. From the shadows, he emerged. Solomon. Up close, he was devastating. His head alone seemed as large as Sarah's entire torso. His mane was a corona of darkness and bronze, magnificent and terrible. His muscles rippled beneath golden fur with every step. And his eyes, those amber eyes she'd sketched 100 times, now focused on her with predatory intensity. His muzzle bore the dark stains of the evening feeding, fresh enough that Sarah could smell copper on the air. He stopped 15 feet away. His tail twitched. His haunches tensed. Every nature documentary, every zoo safety briefing, every survival instinct Sarah POS. Cest screamed 1,000 different instructions: run. Play dead. Make yourself large. Make noise. Don't make noise. Climb. Don't move. She did something none of those sources would ever recommend. She curled into herself. Made herself small. Exposed her back. Presented herself as vulnerable, as non-threatening, as utterly and completely submissive to the king before her. And she began to hum. It wasn't intentional at first, a nervous tremor that became sound. The melody, if it could be called that, was something ancient, something her mother had hummed to her during childhood storms and nightmares. A toneless, gentle vibration that said, "I mean no harm. I am small. I am scared. Please." Solomon's growl cut off. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the sound had been. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, her arms over her head, her body drawn tight as a fist. She waited for the impact. The bite. The end. Instead, she felt heat. The massive warmth of a living furnace approached. She heard the soft pad of paws on dirt, each footfall deliberate. Then she felt breath, hot, moist, carrying the scent of meat and grass and something wild and clean, washing over her exposed neck. A nudge. Gentle but insistent. A broad, rough surface, his muzzle, pressed against her ribs. Sarah's eyes flew open. She uncurled slightly, just enough to see. Solomon stood over her, his massive head lowered, those amber eyes now curious rather than aggressive. He nudged her again, the way a cat might push against a friendly hand. The gesture was unmistakable. "Are you injured? Are you a threat?" Sarah remained frozen, barely breathing. Solomon circled her slowly, sniffing, her hair, her clothes, her bleeding hands. His nostrils flared, processing information through scent in ways she couldn't comprehend. Then he did something that would haunt and heal her for the rest of her life. He settled. Right there, in the dirt beside her, his massive body creating a wall between her and the opening to the main enclosure. He positioned himself as a barrier, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes remained alert, watching. Watching the dark. Ness for threats. Watching over her. In that impossible moment, with adrenaline still screaming through her veins, a memory surfaced. Years ago, she must have been 12 or 13, there'd been a news story. A scandal at an exotic animal breeding facility outside the city. The operation was shut down after investigators found animals in horrific conditions. Several had been seized, including a lion cub whose mother had been killed by neglect. The cub had been malnourished, traumatized, aggressive. But one volunteer at the rescue center had worked miracles with him. A young woman studying veterinary medicine. She'd spent weeks sleeping outside the cub's enclosure, speaking softly, offering food by hand, wearing the same lavender-scented soap every day so he'd associate her scent with safety. The news had followed up months later. The cub had been successfully rehabilitated and transferred to Riverside Zoo, where he thrived. The volunteer had been interviewed, standing outside the zoo gates, smiling with quiet pride. Sarah's mind spun. The timeline fit. The age would be right. And the soap, she'd been using her mother's lavender soap for years, because it was gentle on her sensitive skin. She'd washed her hair with it that morning. Was it possible? Could Solomon be that cub? Could some deep, neurological imprint, some scent memory of kindness from his most vulnerable days, be triggering now? She would never know for certain. But as she sat there, trembling, with a full-grown male lion standing guard over her, the explanation mattered less than the reality. Solomon rumbled, not a growl, but a deep, almost conversational sound. The same chuffing noise lionesses make to reassure cubs. Sarah's hands were shaking so violently she could barely control them, but she managed to slide her phone from her jacket pocket. The screen was spiderwebbed with cracks, but functional. No signal in the moat, she'd expected that. But the camera worked. Moving with aching slowness, Sarah propped the phone against a rock, angling it to capture the impossible scene. She hit record. For 30 seconds, the video captured her, scraped, bleeding, terrified, sitting mere feet from Solomon, who remained calm, watching. She took a photo. The flash startled him. He lifted his head, ears flattening, let out a warning rumble. But then he settled again, as if tolerating the strange behavior of this injured creature under his protection. She stopped recording. The documentation felt important, proof that she wasn't hallucinating, that this impossibility was real. That's when she heard the voice. Jesus Christ. Walter Grimes, Old Walt, to everyone at the zoo, was conducting his nightly rounds. At 72, Walt had seen military service in Vietnam, 3 decades as a zookeeper, and now supreme. Ted his retirement with night security shifts. He'd developed an instinct for wrongness, an ability to sense when something was off. He'd noticed the open gate in the temporary fencing, seen the fresh scrape marks on the moat's edge. And now, shining his high-powered flashlight down into that moat, he saw something his brain refused to process. A teenage girl. Sarah, he recognized her from the volunteer roster. Sitting upright, clearly injured. And Solomon. Standing between the girl and the enclosure opening. Not stalking. Not attacking. Guarding. Walt had been a zookeeper long enough to know what he was seeing, even if it defied all logic. He also knew that one wrong move could shatter this fragile détente and end with a dead girl. He keyed his radio, speaking in the measured tone of a man who'd learned to stay calm when the world went insane. This is Walt. Code 13 at the Lion Moat. Repeat, Code 13. Civilian in the enclosure with the alpha male. Situation is currently stable, I repeat, stable. Need animal management, medical, and command. Silent approach. No sirens, no shouting, no aggressive movement. We've got a miracle happening here, and I'd like to keep it that way. The response was immediate confusion, then controlled urgency. Within 15 minutes, the night shift supervisor arrived, followed by Dr. Patricia Morgan, the head of the Big Cat Department, a woman who'd spent 30 years studying and caring for lions. Squad cars rolled in with lights but no sirens. Paramedics staged at a distance. Patricia peered over the edge of the moat, her flashlight joining Walt's. She'd worked with Solomon since his arrival at the zoo as a traumatized 2-year-old cub. She knew his history, his temperament, his triggers. What she saw now shouldn't exist. He's protecting her, Patricia whispered, more to herself than to Walt. Look at his body language. He's positioned himself as a barrier. He's treating her like a cub. Can we dart him? The police lieutenant asked, hand on his weapon. Absolutely not. Patricia's voice was steel. If we dart him, he'll panic. He could turn on her before the sedative takes effect, or the entire pride could come investigate, and then we have 4 lions and an injured girl. We have to work with Solomon's cooperation, not against it. They formulated a plan. Patricia would be low. Read into the far end of the moat via the zoo's mobile crane, the same crane used for moving large equipment and fallen trees. She'd use voice commands and food rewards to lure Solomon toward the night house entrance, creating a window for rescue. Sarah watched this preparation from her position in the dirt, comprehension arriving in fragments. Rescue. They were coming. She was going to survive this. The realization made her start crying, quiet, exhausted tears that she couldn't suppress. Hey, Solomon. Hey, big man. Her voice was conversational, calm. Look what I've got for you. She pulled a chunk of prime beef from the insulated bag at her waist, Solomon's favorite. She tossed it toward the night house entrance, where the steel door was now open, light spilling into the darkness. Solomon looked at the meat. Looked at Sarah. Looked back at the meat. His tail lashed once, uncertainty. Go on, Patricia coaxed. You've done good. You've taken care of her. Now let us take care of her. Come on, Solomon. Come here. For a long moment, Solomon didn't move. Then he turned to Sarah one final time. He leaned down, his muzzle inches from her face, and breathed out, a warm, grass-scented exhalation. A goodbye. A benediction. Then he turned and walked toward the meat, toward Patricia, toward the night house. The 2 younger males and the lionesses, who'd been watching from the shadows, followed their alpha's lead. Now! Patricia hissed into her radio. The crane swung smoothly, the rescue harness dropping beside Sarah. Hands reached down from above. Walt, impossibly agile for his age, had rappelled down partway to help. Come on, sweetheart. Arms through the loops. That's it. We've got you. Sarah's hands fumbled with the straps, her fingers numb and clumsy. Walt fastened the clips with practiced efficiency. You're safe. You're safe now. The crane winched her up. Up through cool air that tasted like freedom. Up past stone walls and metal fencing. Up into the realm of human voices and flashing lights and her mother's scream of anguished relief. She cleared the lip of the moat, and hands pulled her onto solid ground. Elena was there, having been called by zoo security, her face a landscape of terror and fury. Sarah. Oh God, Sarah. The aftermath was a hurricane of light and noise and consequence. Police interviews in sterile rooms that smelled of disinfectant and burnt coffee. Hospital examinations, bruised ribs, sprained shoulder, lacerations, but miraculously nothing broken, nothing permanent. Her mother's tears, both furious and relieved, falling onto Sarah's hair as Elena held her daughter like she might evaporate. The photo went viral before dawn. Not through Sarah, she'd surrendered her phone to police, but through a well-meaning paramedic who'd shown the image to a colleague in disbelief. That colleague had sent it to a friend. That friend had posted it on social media. By sunrise, the world was watching. Teen survives lion encounter, the lion that wouldn't kill, miracle at Riverside Zoo. The video followed hours later. Sarah sitting in the dirt, Solomon standing guard. The visual proof of an impossibility. News vans descended on the zoo like locusts. Sarah's name trended globally. The story had everything: innocence, danger, salvation, and a twist of almost divine intervention. But the viral narrative missed the critical question: how did she end up in that moat? Tyler Beck provided the answer. While Marcus and Devin maintained their silence, coached by expensive lawyers, Tyler crumbled under the weight of his guilt. He walked into the police station Sunday morning, his parents flanking him, and confessed everything. The beer. The harassment. The premeditation of bringing bolt cutters. The act of throwing Sarah into what they believed would be her death. The arrests came Monday morning, executed with deliberate publicity. Marcus Thornton and Devin Chase were pulled from first period in handcuffs, their varsity jackets offering no protection. The charges were severe: assault, reckless endangerment, criminal confinement. Trinity dissolved overnight, their legacy now toxicity and shame. Riverside High's administration, facing lawsuits and national scrutiny, implemented immediate MS anonymous reporting systems. Mandatory anti-bullying assemblies. The varsity programs underwent review. But for Sarah, justice was a distant, abstract concept. She was physically healed within weeks, but the psychological architecture of her world had been demolished. The nightmares came nightly, not of lions, but of hands shoving, of laughter echoing, of falling endlessly into darkness. She couldn't return to school. Her presence attracted attention like blood in water. The media wanted interviews. Classmates wanted photos. Everyone wanted a piece of the girl who survived. She became a prisoner of her own story until a letter arrived, handwritten on zoo stationery. Dr. Patricia Morgan was requesting a meeting. 2 weeks after the incident, Elena drove Sarah to the zoo's administrative building. Patricia met them in a private conference room, her weathered face kind. "I wanted to speak with you directly," Patricia said, pouring tea with steady hands. "About Solomon. About what happened. That volunteer, Rebecca Chen, passed away 3 years ago," Patricia said quietly. "Car accident. Solomon grieved. We all did. Rebecca was special." She paused, looking directly at Sarah. "The soap you use, your shampoo, they're lavender-based?" Sarah nodded mutely. "We think that's part of it. Not all of it, but part. Scent memory in lions is profound. You may have triggered something deeply embedded, a sense memory of safety, of kindness from his most vulnerable time." Patricia's eyes were wet. "But it's more than that. Solomon read your body language. You didn't run. You submitted. You showed vulnerability without aggression. In lion social structure, that's a cub's behavior. You essentially told him, without words, that you needed protection." Patricia slid a folder across the table. "I'm offering you a position. An official internship with our Big Cat program. Paid. Structured. We could use someone with your unique connection to these animals." Sarah stared at the folder, unable to speak. "You don't have to decide now," Patricia continued. "But you should know, you have a gift. Not a magical one. A practical one. You observe. You listen. You respect. The animals respond to that." Sarah accepted the internship a week later. She started slowly, working behind the scenes on enrichment preparation, never in public view. Her first task was creating scent puzzles for the lions, boxes and balls infused with different spices and oils to stimulate their hunting instincts. She was in the preparation room when Patricia appeared at the door. "He's in the holding area. Would you like to see him?" They walked to an observation corridor, a secured area where keepers could monitor the animals during health checks. Solomon was in a holding pen, separated by steel bars and reinforced glass. He was pacing, restless from being isolated during his routine examination. Patricia opened a small slot in the wall, the scent exchange port, used to help animals acclimate to new environments. Or people. "Go ahead. Let him catch your scent." Sarah approached slowly. She stood before the slot, her heart pounding. On the other side, Solomon stopped pacing. His head swiveled toward the opening. Sarah breathed out slowly, letting her exhalation carry through the slot. On the other side, Solomon approached. She heard the wet sound of his nostrils flaring, processing. Then she heard it. That sound. The chuffing recognition. The greeting. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but she was smiling. Solomon rumbled again, deeper, more prolonged. Sarah hummed back, that same wordless melody from the darkest night of her life. For long minutes, they communicated across steel and glass in a language older than words. When Patricia finally touched Sarah's shoulder, indicating it was time to go, Sarah whispered, "Thank you." She didn't know if Solomon could hear her. It didn't matter. The gratitude was for everything, for the mercy he'd shown, for the protection he'd offered, for teaching her tea. Marcus Thornton served 18 months in juvenile detention, followed by probation. His college prospects evaporated. His family moved out of state to escape the notoriety. Devon Chase received a similar sentence. His athletic career ended before it began. Tyler Beck, due to his cooperation, received community service and mandatory counseling. He wrote Sarah a letter, she never opened it. Their punishment, while significant, couldn't undo the act. But it did send a message: cruelty has consequences. Bullies are not immune. The social calculus that had protected them, athletic prowess, popularity, privilege, crumbled when confronted with attempted murder. Because that's what it was, the prosecutor had argued successfully. Throwing someone into a lion's enclosure isn't a prank. It's attempted homicide. Sarah's story refused to fade. It was taught in ethics classes, discussed in psychology seminars, analyzed in zoology journals. But the people examining it weren't seeing what Sarah saw. They saw a survival story. A miracle. A viral moment. Sarah saw something different. She saw the accidental intersection of kindness and memory. She saw how one person's compassion, Rebecca Chen's patient rehabilitation of a traumatized cub, had created an echo that resonated years later, saving a life that woman would never know about. She saw the profound truth that our actions ripple forward in ways we cannot predict. That the gentleness we offer the world, even to creatures who cannot thank us, creates invisible threads of grace that may catch someone falling in the darkness. 5 years later, Dr. Sarah Mitchell stood in the observation corridor of the Big Cat Research Center she now managed. The title was impressive, but the work was what mattered: improving enrichment programs, studying social dynamics, advocating for better conditions for captive big cats nationwide. Solomon was 18 now, elderly for a lion. His mane had silvered. His movements had slowed. But his eyes remained sharp, intelligent, filled with that ancient wisdom Sarah had first recognized as a frightened 15-year-old. She visited him weekly, always through barriers, always maintaining professional protocols. But their communication transcended safety glass and steel. When she approached, he would rise and approach the barrier. When she hummed that melody, he would rumble his response. An invisible bond, forged in darkness, maintained in light. The night she received the call, Patricia's voice thick with tears, Sarah drove to the zoo in the darkness, breaking every speed limit. She arrived to find the veterinary team assembled, their faces grave. Solomon was dying. Kidney failure, the inevitable betrayal of age. They'd made him comfortable in the medical holding area, his massive body resting on heated blankets, for lines delivering pain medication. Patricia met Sarah at the door. "He's fading. I thought, you should be here." Sarah entered the medical suite. Solomon lay on his side, his brea